Okay, now, today we have one more main session, and this is a panel on creativity. And in a moment, I'm going to introduce the panel, but I'll actually ask them to introduce themselves, much easier. And also, I will start with a short interview from Linda Loppa. Now, Linda Loppa, for those of you who don't know, was the former director of the academy here in Antwerp, and she was very pivotal in the Antwerp 6 for that period of time. Now, Linda has some views about the future and the concept of creativity, and we thought we'd give her the opportunity to start off the conversation. And then after that movie is finished, I'll introduce the panel. I will introduce them one at a time. And behind them, on the screens, not behind you, on these screens, you will see some videos and accompanying visuals to help introduce who they are and where they are from. So maybe guys in the room there, I hope they're in there, we can start off with the Linda's video. Is that okay?
Fashion can't save the world. No, I don't think so. I feel that fashion is going in a direction where there is overconsumption, there is overacting, there is for everything more expensively more. So fashion can save a little part of the world, but it can't save the world. So I think that we have to do together with all the people, the players, the scientists, the people who are working behind the field, the technicians, the craftspeople. Those together we can save the world. But fashion in its own, it's very polluting industry. And I'm not sure that with all the recycling we are going to save the world. So my answer is no, fashion can't save the world. Now, that's the moment to think about solutions, because talking about problems is one thing, but finding solutions is another thing. And so I started writing, and I wrote of different topics. So I see the fashion industry, but outside of the fashion weeks, fashion conferences, I might say not fashion weeks and fashion system. So I thought maybe I have to rethink the whole system in the different situations that we need in the fashion industry. And suddenly I was writing, and in August 2020 I went to an advisor legal office, and I deposited my document. I never did that in my life. I thought, well, it's all ephemeral and fashion is. But this time I felt that I was writing something important. We called it icebreaker because it was kind of a moment that the book became real, you know, that out of the book, of the paper, it became a real project. And so we organized these icebreakers with 11 conversations with 22 people all over the world. We connected New York with London, we connected New Delhi with Sydney, we connected Rome with whatever. So it was so fantastic because it was even with people I only met once in my life, but who remained in the back of my brain. And so they were all very nice conversations, and that's where the book was born. The 11 is infinity. It's a lucky number in the Indian culture. And a 0 is closing and a 1 is opening. So that was another motivation to say 11 was the right number. I have two favorite containers. One is the critical container, because I think we have to be critical, but in a positive way, and also telling stories and giving a voice to young people. And I think that one is something that I would like to work on very hard, how we can write about fashion in a more positive way. The other one is the dining container. I think the dining container is a fantastic container because around the table you have the best ideas in the world. You start talking with friends, you have a good glass of wine, and you start changing the world around the table about food and so on. So I think the dining container in every culture is different, and that might be the best to start with, because if you go to African culture, Chinese, Japanese, the food is so important. So I think my dining container is going the one I prefer, at least when everything will be starting, I hope soon. I think that's very useful that Prada, who has the Prada Foundation, is doing this kind of research program. If it's remaining by research by philosophers and so on, then it's a boring conference. But if we can jump in with the brain container and we can talk to those people and see what creativity adds in the human society through the brain, then we have a beautiful progress. And that's what I think research should be. Research on fabrics. I met a nice person in Paris, a Japanese company who are researching on fabrics, but it's not fabric. I mean, you have so many people who are probably coming out with beautiful new ideas. And I think that's what I think also fashion schools should do. We should go more in depth of new technologies, new people to connect with, who have something to say on research level. And where else to do that than in education? And we can make special laboratories for that in every fashion school, but we need also to educate the teachers. We have also to give a program for teachers that is interesting for them to follow. But I think when they start doing a fashion course in a school, the advice would be, think about the purpose of what you're going to do. Why do you do this? It's a very important question. But maybe you will discover the answer after a few years, but start with that question. Start also why in this changing world, how can I contribute to the world with what I'm doing? No? Because otherwise I'm spoiling again overconsumption and so on. So it's a very good question to start with.
Now Linda is going to be online. I think she's in Florence. Is she in Florence? She's on Florence. Anyway, she's away. So what I'd like to do is now to introduce the panel. Now, there's Linda. Linda, hi.
Hello, everybody.
So I have to keep next to this microphone. So I'm going to ask the panel now. Now I'm going to ask Andrea to introduce himself. Now Andrea is going to go first, and is that okay? Oh yeah, okay. I thought. Okay, so the visuals are going to go. Andrea is going to introduce himself, and maybe you could say your relationship, because Linda was at the academy. You're at the academy now, so maybe we could start that. We could also talk about your kind of your own understanding of creativity, and I think that's what we're going to start with. And we're going to come back to that a bit further, and maybe also build on some of the things that Linda's spoken about.
Mike. Hello, ecco. Thank you, Ian. And yes, my view on creativity, I presented like a part of my project a couple of hours ago And I was explaining, I worked for over 13 years in different areas of the creative industry. I work in art, I work in design, including a lot in manufacturing, and I worked a lot in education. And what I'm doing now is something that brings together all these dimensions. So my project called Relational Creativity, it's something that wants to create a hybrid structures across the fashion school, the industry, business and manufacturing, and the public environment. And the place where we're starting this research is here in Antwerp. Just adding one thing about this research and about Antwerp. What I think, we hear of many of the importance of putting the systems together. And I think one peculiar aspect of my research and also about my work connects my proposal specifically with the Antwerp Academy, because I think all these systems of exchanges between all these different sectors ultimately raise a question. Is okay, one thing is having exchanges, but how do you actually know that you're understanding and communicating something important about the other dimension? And my idea is that the elements of personal expression, so very visual, sensorial elements, can be the key for this sort of languages that become visual, material, and also strategic. And I think this is really the legacy of Antwerp. It's a school that has been obsessively insisting for the past 30 years on those, on expression. And now I think the goal is to use this expression not as a goal in itself, but as a resource to speak to garment makers, to business people, and directly to the public.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Shayli, maybe we can ask you to go next, if you don't mind.
That slideshow is not mine.
Is that what? It's going to change. One second.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can start with I graduated the Antwerp Fashion Department in 2018. And since I have very recently, with my business partner Anne Claus, founded Mutani. It's a digital fashion unitive, we're calling it, where we bring in real life radical fashion designers and build teams with digital collaborators to produce digital assets for game spaces. So we use this to creatively regenerate the designers by helping them use this technology for creative purposes, but also receive financial remuneration for the sale of the assets to game developers, game players, crypto investors, for example. We're hoping that these actions can also feed back into their real life creation through this support and also through inspiring them through the collaborative actions. This kind of happened out of the fact that as a young designer, we were pushed to create very artistic and highly creative work. But when you enter the industry, a lot of this has to be suppressed. Even to enter the industry, you have to be able to survive on very low or no income as an intern, or you have to already have the financial resources to start up your brand, or you have to work in a cafe and build it from the ground up. So we really wanted to provide a resource and a support system and a new channel that designers can use to benefit and continue being creative without hindrance of the commercial atmosphere. So what you're seeing here is just a few tests that we've done from my design work at the moment, but we're building out our proof of concept at this stage with 6 of the Antwerp Fashion Department alumni.
Thank you very much indeed. So we have here 2 young designers, 2 people who represent the kind of future. Now, the last 2 who represent the wise heads of the industry are perhaps slightly been around a bit longer, but they can provide us with a form of understanding of creativity that perhaps builds on the kind of conversation we had this morning from water. So I'd really like to invite Bianca to introduce herself and really to say who you are and your background, and also why you're here.
So I'm Bianca Luzi. I'm born and raised in Belgium. I did my university in Italy. I studied economics. I always had a passion for fashion, but also for politics. Anyway, long story short, after my studies, I ended up at A. van der Vorst, actually one of my first interviews in fashion. And I became a freelance salesperson. at A. van der Worst and Martin Margiela, Milan and Paris. A few years later, I went back to politics. I had the opportunity to work for the Vice Prime Minister and Minister of the Internal Affairs in Brussels, which I did for 3 years. But I realized I was missing fashion, so I did go back to fashion. And then I ended up at first Bickenbergs for a few years. And after that, at Raf Simons, where I'm now since 2008.
Yes.
Voilà.
Thank you very much. So Bianca is the CEO of Raf Simons. Yeah, she explained. She's been very modest. Oh, we have a video. We're even better. We have a video. Please, let's see the video. I assume that's not a technological problem. So nevertheless, lastly, but certainly not least, I'd like to introduce Filip. And Filip, would you like to tell people who you are and why you're here, that kind of thing?
I'm Filip Arickx. I'm 50% of A.F. van der Worst. Together with my wife, I started in 1998 A.F. van der Worst and had in those 22 years our own collection, which we presented each season in Paris or in Milan or in London. Last year in February, we decided to put the own collection on the side and to concentrate us on other creative dimensions. I'm very happy to be part of this panel because as the how can I say, the headline was, Can Fashion Save the World? Together with Linda, and I don't know for the others, but I think so too. I don't think fashion can save the world, but can creativity save the world? I think yes. Why do I say yes? Because I think in every way, we have to be creative. We have to have creative solutions on problems. We have to have creative answers. That's why I'm very happy also that Bianca is here. And she mentioned she was in politics before. Also there. So creative hasn't always to do with artistic dimensions. It has to, it covers all disciplines, all dimensions. So that's why I said yes to this open discussion, to just express my my vision on the creativity and how fast it's evolving in this world at this moment. And it's really nice to see someone who's into digital fashion, someone who's really like for a long time was into another discipline as fashion, and then another young dynamic and energetic person who finds his own way in his life. So that's mainly the reason why I'm here.
Thank you, Philip. Is there a video? We can have a video. Okay. Speaking as a geriatric, you know. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Okay, so we had this panel this evening, and really one of the things that I think has driven today's conversations really is this notion of creativity, and we've kind of introduced it on a variety of different times throughout the day. And I suppose really that the thing that crossed my mind really from the beginning really is, you know, is creativity the same? Is it moving on? You know, because you said at the moment, I said, and I was, you know, creativity is the future. But, and so my question, I suppose, really is it changing? Does it have to change because the industry is moving in a different direction, or is creativity still the same? I mean, is it something that is, you know, we talk about in Antwerp, you know, I assume, you know, this notion of this kind of eureka moments and this notions of being individual creative, but is that the same? Is it now a collaboration, or is it something? Now we're talking about the digital, we're talking about successful brands. The challenges that are facing you all now is something quite, you know, incredible. I mean, the fashion industry is in turmoil. You know, there is so many challenges at the present time in so many different directions. And if the future and the solution is always creativity, my question is that enough?
It's a question.
Yeah, you go for it.
Is creativity changing? I think so, because like the means we have to be creative got exponential, meaning that's like through all the social media, and the world is becoming almost our house. So we have much more means to be creative. So in that way, did it change? Yes. Initially, where it comes from, meaning it comes from the stomach, it comes from the heart, it comes from our soul, it comes from this body. Did this body or the human body changed? No. So in that way, I have to give two answers. Like creativity, initially no, but through to the means, it has changed.
Bianca, please.
Yeah, I would like to add something on top. That's actually what we were talking about before this day, that we are talking about creativity in fashion, but I think it's important, what Filip also said during the other talk, is what is fashion? We have to define fashion as well, because you can say, okay, creativity, did it change, did it not change, where is it coming from? But creativity in fashion, I think it's as important to define what is fashion. She knows fashion in her way. For us, fashion is different than for Andrea or for other people. So slow fashion, fast fashion, there's already a big difference that the words say it themselves. But within fashion, as I might see it, Filip also might see it different while we are quite close. So creativity, yeah, I think it didn't change that much. Okay. Either, yeah, it's what Filip says. I think it's.
But is creativity still as important to establish brands?
I would put in the business of fashion how we see fashion. If you don't put creativity as a core in the business, it doesn't make sense to do fashion.
There's no future for it? No. Yeah, there's nothing. And do you
if you don't put creativity as the center of the business, then there is no future for that business.
Yep, show it.
I might add that, well, I feel the term creativity has become a lot more loose than maybe what we who practice it know. For example, like when you have a fashion competition, it's often said they're looking for the next creative designer. But then if the sponsors is so powerful in the selection of that winner, then what value does that hold? So I kind of call into question, when we ask for it and when we seek it, what is the breadth of creativity that we look at? When we're looking for something new, and that's kind of the question I raise then is how is creativity perceived on a mass scale at this point?
Linda, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you. I'm listening to the interesting conversation.
I mean, you've got significant experience from Antwerp, and also in Italy and other parts of the world. Has for you the notion of creativity changed? And then I'll ask Andrea what he thinks about how the impact will be on the academy, and also for you in the terms of implementing this in this context. So, Linda, what do you think? Creativity, has it changed? Is it the same, or is it something else?
Well, there is a lot of power in a few houses in fashion that is a topic that we should discuss, because if the power is too big, then creativity will be only in function of the business, the final turnover, and how they can develop the business further. So creativity there is becoming a daily delivering of new ideas, and every month, every 2 months, there is a new show, there is a new presentation, there is a collaboration, and then it becomes like a kind of not really interesting anymore. It's not, you can't follow it anymore. It's not, you're not part of it anymore. You're not a consumer anymore, because the markets are very different and new. You have the Asian market, you have the market that is buying daily. I mean, and if you look at young generation, those who are 18 years old, the Gen Z, they buy daily. They are the ones who speak the most about sustainability, but they are also the big polluters. So that generation is the interesting generation to analyze, I guess. Because if you see the influences related to the power system, that's one category. But if you see the younger generation, the kids who are buying, they have other values. They want the fastness. They want every day something new. And how can you find a balance between those two powers? In the middle of those two powers, you have designers who are really working thanks to their creativity. And I have myself also a question. I don't have an answer, but I'm searching for how can we help them? How can we support them? How can we connect them with craftspeople? And even if they don't want to go in that or the other way, how is it possible, and what can we do for that segment?
Andrea, how do you respond to that? Do you find that is true for the young people that you see in Milan and in Antwerp?
I think the answer also to that is I agree absolutely with Bianca and with Filip, and creativity is a core value. But Shayli brings up a really important point. There is a lot of creative washing, just like greenwashing and all that. We use the term in a loose way. So I think the enemy of creativity is literality, to me, if that is a word in English. And this is a cultural issue relating also to the youth and how we use terms. So creativity for me really requires a sort of proximity with processes. And for instance, I want to make a parallel between manual techniques and digital techniques, because Filip was saying today we have incredible creative tools. But for instance, this is very old school, but the brush, you can use it in 1,000 ways, explore how it works. iPad, like Procreate, Photoshop, they allow a lot of tools, but you're always using the interface. So there's a difference between the interface and if you're programming, if you're doing computer coding, because to me, it's computer coding that is creative, not using Photoshop. Or mixing different things. And this is the point about creativity, which is, for me is very relevant. It requires a multi-dimensionality, not a single dimensionality. And so this is the challenge.
But is that best done by one person? Or is it best, I mean, it seems to me what you're suggesting is that in some respects, what creativity is doing is becoming more of a collaboration. And it's much more a kind of multifaceted kind of context than perhaps it was ever considered, 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
It's true, but this collaboration requires that things are not approached leisurely. And so the difficult part of the collaboration is the mixing of languages. And I think this is the hardest part, because in this creative washing, we also have a system which is very polite. So everybody's allowed to, in my opinion, this is, but this is a separation, it's a separation of languages still.
Okay. I'm going to actually put it over to the audience, because I actually think there might be someone here who disagrees with this perspective and would like to ask a question or make a comment. Annick, you obviously are jumping up. Yes. No, microphone. Wait a second, please.
Thank you. No, I was just wondering, is it not important to make a difference between creativity and the creative process? Okay. And the creative process can be collaborative, but yeah, there are two different things, I think.
Two different things, yeah. Do you agree? Yeah. Microphone.
Two different reasons. I mean, like those collabs might be indeed a different process, but it's also a different. It's also aiming a different result, because like those collabs for me is more to enlarge the communities. So if one discipline has a community, the other one has one. By setting up a collaboration, it's not always, it doesn't have always something to do with creativity. It has something to do with creating an audience and creating a community. So I think that's another reason of creating collabs. So in that way, there are different reasons to make up your own creative process. But on the other hand, creativity, as Linda mentioned, those big fashion houses who have their impact and are, how can I say, guiding creativity by their turnover and by their results.
But that's not creativity.
That's for me no creativity. It's I wrote down that's what I call creative by democracy.
Yeah, exactly.
Meaning, like, we give what the audience want. But, yeah, you still have to be creative for that, but it's an artificial creativity.
Well, that's exactly right. It's artificial. I mean, that's the question, right? Is the authenticity of creativity comes from the purity of the individual and what they find as being important at that time. Now, what you're saying about these big fashion houses and what Linda intimated beforehand is that's not the case. That is not the case. No. And what we're seeing, is almost a conflict which is taking place within the industry itself.
Exactly.
And I'm going to say something now, which is maybe it's not very good, but I don't know if anyone saw or attended Paris Fashion Week in the last few weeks. No? I heard bad things about it. Linda, you did. I did. And Adrian, did you? And what did you find? Sorry, you haven't got a microphone, but did you find it to be a stimulating effect? So the response I've heard is, to some extent, it was more of the same. That hadn't moved forward at all. In some respect, it was disappointing.
I was on the last event for Albert, and that was a very moving event, and it was all about creativity in reflection of Albert. And I think the emotion of that event took over whatever we saw creatively.
Yes, I think the emotion, that's a different thing. It's
very different.
Yeah. And I just wonder if you heard, or other people may have a different view. I mean, maybe.
I think generally we all expected this mythical reaction of the industry post-COVID. Well, we're still in COVID, we're not in post-COVID, but it was a myth. There wasn't going to be less shows. There wasn't going to be more thought about sustainability. If anything, I know in all the houses, there are more collections being produced than ever before.
Right.
So the idea that the creativity is being pushed to its limits because the financial element, as you said, is taken over. And this is happening in all the big houses. They're doing more and more collections, even if we heard from the beginning that wasn't going to happen.
Bianca, sorry.
Yeah. My experience with creativity, I mean, working with someone who's very creative, is that, of course, it can be what Linda says, like the big houses, every 2 months they have to make a new collection and sell it. But I see it in two ways. Like if you make the collections to be profitable and to have every time a bigger turnover is one thing. But what I see with my business partner is that the moment one collection is finished, he has a million ideas for the new one. So if I would ask to Raf, like, okay, let's make every 2 months a collection, he would be able to do that. The question is, what do you do with that creativity? Do you use it for business? Do you use it for other purposes? But I think a creative person is creative any moment, every day. And whether today he can make 5 designs and tomorrow 50, that's organic. But yeah, I think we just make 2 collections a year because we follow the system.
And I mean, your observation of Ralph, for example, do you see a difference in his creativity now than it was maybe 5-10 years ago?
In his creativity in the process, not. No, we on purpose stay away from everything that is outside the 4 walls of our office. Of course, I mean, once you go to Paris and you see the other shows and you realize, okay, that's what it is about, but it's more about the system and the bigger houses and the marketing tools that they apply. But creativity stays creativity. And I think the business in fashion changed a lot, the way to do business. But I think a person who is a creative designer and wants to be creative and is creative should be creative every day. And yeah, I lost the thread.
And Shayli, do you feel, in terms of your particular interest, that creativity is easier because you don't have the same pressures on you?
I mean, absolutely. You don't have to have so much to be able to express yourself in the digital space. But that's also why Mutani exists, because I don't expect a lot of creative fashion designers to want to sit on a computer all day. It's not a good time for a lot of us who like to touch and feel and create. So there's a bit of an allergy to the digital fashion space because of this. So we want to be able to form that connection without interfering with the creative process and allow designers to be able to think beyond the limits of physics, science, reality, even the human form, and really be able to enjoy that. It provides a space or a side hustle outside of the real fashion hustle, which is extremely demanding and very time poor, to tap back into who they really are as an artist, essentially.
Thank you. Anyone? Oh, Adrian, you want to? Could you wait for the microphone, please?
Sorry, I'm on a roll.
Oh, good.
I just thought of another example. The recent mashup of brands. I think that's a sign of anti-creativity. Putting 2 brands' names together just to create, thinking they're going to find a new market is repulsive.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of criticism on this
Kim
as
Morella.
well. It's again like, let's say, collaboration washing. Yeah. There's also a lot of that in the industry where people say, oh, let's collaborate, but it actually means do what I tell you for free, possibly. So, real collaboration is being able to even be open enough and not so stubborn enough to say, these are my ideas, we do what I say, but to be able to have a back and forth with another creative entity and find and bring to light new ideas and new aesthetics and new ways of working and learning from each other. And that's also why this, I guess, the concept of collaborative digital fashion, it works for us.
Does that mean it will become more fragmented? The industry itself will gradually go in multiple directions, and itself it becomes rather than something that has a core, as something that's going in different directions and perhaps at different speeds, and maybe going in ways that we perhaps will see less creativity in parts of it, and in other parts, for example, exploring and pushing the boundaries, because that I think is what we're talking about. Will this creativity still push the boundaries, or will it make too many compromises?
I think we'd be naive to think that a fashion brand isn't one giant team effort by a lot of people who have to put in a lot of collaborative energy. So I think we forget that sometimes because we put one person's name on the end, but we're already doing it. And I don't think these two ways of working need to butt heads. They're just working with the same output, which is fashion, but it's two very different avenues, two very different audiences and ways of thinking.
Do we have any more questions from anyone? Any other points or comments? So we have. If you'd like to come down to the front, if you would, please, because you're right at the back, and it'll make it easier. Please ask your question.
I was just wanted to question again. I think the role of the designer could be a real important connector designer. We saw a lot of podcasts during the COVID where all the designers all of a sudden discovered their team, which they didn't know, never have seen, were always like somehow protected not to work with them together. And they discovered with a lot of pleasure to connect with them and to discover their own work, and they found out to what point they're really totally exhausted with everything they do all the time. So I think that things are shifting, and especially when you think the designer reconnects with the world in the sense of for whom I'm doing what and with whom, and to integrate more people, there is a real chance to change something because of that. So I think, of course, everybody who is creative is intrinsically inside of themselves creative. But the role, I hope it changed, and that designers have the space to do that. And there's a question of industry, because on the other hand, we hear people telling, in fact, the designer, he just makes his some fashion show. That's important. Behind that, there's all the marketing team who decides what is filtered out in the Instagram and what we have to produce. You have as well decide that there are a lot of people behind filtering what has to be sold, and the designer just does somehow the nice creative communication part. But I think the designer really can do something, and hopefully it changes.
Any comments? I mean, it seems to me from what you were saying is that it's going to be much easier for a designer with a small organization to respond in that way, because they can they're much more agile. Whereas we're talking about large particular houses here that have, if you like, limitations. They have a team, they have this setup, they have marketing. It's all about coordination across multiple teams, across multiple sites. Whereas for a small particular brand, they've got this agility to kind of shift and to push and to move, and also to be, if you like, respond in a much more, if you like, a quicker way. And I think I could argue, is that in some respects you might see the real creativity in the future in the smaller areas. I don't know if you have a view, Andrea.
There were like so many inputs. Maybe your specific question about creativity in the small, yes, for sure. Agility is becoming an asset for sure, more and more. I don't know if this is so related. When I speak to young people and we speak about designers, they come up with names that I have never heard of, and then they have a huge following on social media, and they distribute from there. And in all of the systems, because we're speaking of creativity in fashion, but creativity in other industry evolves in different ways, and fashion can definitely look at those systems. But yeah, in all the systems, the gatekeepers, and the big players are disappearing, and so we have a fragmentation that can be for worse, but also for good. Definitely, when we have so many entities, the question is, how do you reach the critical mass that makes a systemic change? Do you need to reach critical mass? I think there was a very good, we're speaking of fashion, what is fashion, and it's fascinating. And this morning, there was a good point from Dominique about Walter asking about relevance.
Yep.
And I think, fashion is many things, but there is a point where you need a relevance, whether it's in your small community or in the larger system, and that's the critical mass.
Okay. We had another question. Yes, sorry.
Is this working? Yeah. Linda mentioned the independent designers.
Yep.
And I think they're the most exciting part of fashion. And I think a lot of people are inspired by them from all over the world. So I think the power of independent designers is unbelievable. And it's a great opportunity. So you guys are talking about creativity, and some people talked about process. And of course, definitions are complex. Well, what about the fact about inspiration? Independent designers change the world, how we dress or how we identify women's rights, cancer. There's a lot of work being done in fashion to bring up important issues. So for creativity, sometimes it's very singular, it's very personal, or it's beauty-driven, aesthetic-driven. What about other kind of different themes of inspiration?
Are you talking about different themes from within fashion, or are you talking about
in the creative, being creative, and then looking at a process what drives creativity and what is inspiration?
Yeah.
So if can inspiration be modular design? Can inspiration be activism? Can inspiration be shifting how we think? So themes, what is creativity? But to be inspired, I'm inspired by other designers, I'm inspired by flowers, I'm inspired by painting.
And I think that's what Andrea was suggesting.
I just want to say something, I really want to say, I believe it's really not about inspiration, it's about what you do with this inspiration. And I think the tools you use, they affect the result enormously. And for instance, media language, you bring up really important issues. Is media language, is aesthetic photography the tool that can actually make these issues, real in your actions?
No. Yes. No. Bianca, yes.
I think from my experience, everything can inspire a creative person. Maybe Filip can explain better than me. I'm not creative. But in my business, I can see that sometimes it is a person who has cancer. Sometimes it is a rock band that you were a fan of when you were 16. Or it can be a color, it can be a painting. Everything can indeed be the input of a creative process.
But is that the idea of these collaborations? Like Adrian mentioned beforehand, these collaborations about these kind of people coming together. Is the idea behind a collaboration is to inspire something?
Yeah, exactly.
To create a kind of different kind of feeling? Or is it a cop-out?
I think it depends what the purpose of the collaboration. If it is Dior Supreme, is in anno 2019 is different, in my opinion, than Raf Simons' Joy Division 2003. Joy Division was a band that Raf was inspired by, and the followers from Raf Simons as well, they were in that scene. So I think that is, you have to place, I think the collaboration can be inspiring and can be a creative process, but it depends a bit the purpose of the collaboration, how that also the collaboration reflects in your collection as well.
Annie, you have a question.
Do you want to respond?
Okay. Yeah, actually, what I wanted to ask is that I totally agree that a creative person, if it is 10 years or 20 years ago or today, it's not that different perhaps, but the context changed. And so now society has also become more ethical. And so you have sustainability, inclusion, cultural appropriation, and so on. So I was wondering, for a creative person, is that a challenge or is that limiting your creativity?
I think, but we more or less discussed this part also when we had like how do you say, a pre-dialogue with it. And then one of the very interesting points that Bianca made during the thing was should creativity be inclusive? Can't it be exclusive? So, and that's also something to think about, like, and it's nice to think in that way about creativity, like, because like I heard here some things like which were passing off the role of the designer, but I think that's another discussion, in my opinion. Like, what was really beautiful to hear was the lady over there, that it was like creativity should be beauty, driven by beauty, should be driven by personality, should be driven by aesthetics. But I totally agree, and I think like that's really the discussion, the starting point of the discussion. Can creativity save the world or change the world, or what's the relevance of creativity in this part? Because the aim of creativity, in my opinion, is to have like an eye on the change to a better world, to a more beautiful world, to a more relevant world. Like, and that's for me my aim of being creative. And I think like if we should all think in that direction, we can bring things to a next level. And in that way, that's why I said in the beginning, like, can creativity save the world? Like, yes, we can bring it at least to a next level, to a next decennium, to a next era.
However, I have to be provocative, but of course, creativity could also be inspired by disruption. It can be inspired by pain. It can be by the negatives as well, and therefore it creates a different kind of response from the team. And we've seen this happen in not so much in fashion, but in other disciplines where they've actually seen the negativity of war and the negativity of corruption and disruption as actually a motivation to be creative. And I wonder whether that creates another different kind of tension and perhaps an opportunity in periods like, for example, in the COVID, where we have this kind of context, for example, which is going through huge transitional change, that might need something like this COVID to inspire it. And what I suppose I would expect, what I did think would happen, is that fashion would be inspired by COVID. They would see that this, okay, the digital world is going this direction, but perhaps there's another direction. But at the moment, they haven't really explored that.
No, but fashion can't maybe not be inspired by the COVID, but the medical world can be inspired by COVID, and can be inspired by how fast they need to react on things that happen in society as the COVID and as the. So in that's again why I say like creativity doesn't stop with in an artistic way. It's for me, creativity, it's like in every single detail in life, we in every single detail in each discipline, we should be aware of creativity, and that's the whole point and the whole reason why I'm here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We have another.
Sorry again. We, the royal we, Barbara and I, we do what we can to eliminate the word inspiration and inspired.
Okay.
The younger generation will read that as a download from Pinterest, which in academia we all suffer from death by Pinterest, and it's killing the creativity. So the word inspired to the younger generation just means an image on Instagram. We should really talk about the starting point for research, the starting point for experimentation, because when we talk about inspired, for us older generation, we have a bigger idea. For a younger generation, it's very surface. Okay. So we have banned inspired and inspiration. It's a starting point, and then it's research and experimentation. And I think it's very dangerous when we start saying inspired by COVID, as you say, that's not an inspiration. You can say, research the effects on the industry or the design process by COVID, but inspired by COVID. It's not for us to be inspired by anything. Sorry.
It depends on what's the definition of inspiration, of course.
Yeah, and that's a dirty way to use that word inspired, because then they will justify, I was inspired by this, rather than saying it was my starting point, then to lead to something deeper.
So it's more the perception for you in between generations, which the meaning of the word inspiration or the meaning of the sentence starting point.
So much of what we do is semantics, and when I'll be talking, it's all about words. And how we discuss that with students, the language of fashion. And inspired is one of those dangerous words that will be taken as surface. And the mood board kills industry. I think we're getting whimpers when I mention mood board. People are cringing. And students will just bury us under mood boards. You get portfolios which are about 6 mood boards. None of the students' work's on there. It's all somebody else's work. And there is no job as a professional mood board artist. As far as I'm not aware of it. It's all just plagiarism. Sorry, rant's over. Wait until Friday.
It's all just plagiarism. So
no, but I mean, Adrian, I totally feel your pain. And I think, I mean, it's a great point. And you saw, I also am banning images from this, because it's about the content of the image. You know, it's not the content of experience. And I think fashion is really dealing with experience. And people like you and maybe, you know, I think we still make it in the cut in a way, maybe generationally. But I mean, we refer an image to an experience, and I think this is a critical point. I don't know if I can say we're speaking of higher education, and before I mentioned, I think at the moment where people come to higher education, so many things are already decided, because the personal factor in creativity is not so much about the things I like or my taste. I think it's very much a cognitive style of how you approach problems and in which domains you look for solutions. So if all you're approaching is images, you know, that's not the right cognitive style. So for instance, I think secondary education, vocational training, and even earlier stages of education, of course, my perspective here is education is critical in changing this cognitive style. And what we see is inspiration.
I just thought to raise, and perhaps Linda, this started with you, but you know, at the Fashion Academy, I thought it was amazing that we weren't to look at other designers' work as part of our research, and we were encouraged to attend exhibitions, go to libraries, and take inspiration in our own hands. But you do find at a lot of fashion departments around the world that it is taught to look at other designers' work and create a collage of other designers' work. And when you do enter fashion houses and start to work as an assistant designer, there is a lot of Pinterest scrolling again. So, and there's a lot of illustration that is strictly done on Illustrator and not by hand. So a lot of the kind of ways that we develop our creative expression has changed, and it's being taught differently. And it's something that I really appreciated about being here, is that we are taught in a more old school way by some standards, but it has a high value when you're developing your character as a designer and as a creative person.
I mean, what we spoke about this morning with Botter was really about how the development of students was both inward looking, in the sense of finding the inward creativity of the individual, but now perhaps more so outward looking, recognizing that it's a much more societal role that designers have to place. And I don't know if you agree, Linda, because I think from what you've said about your containers, your containers and the icebreakers that you conducted across the world was really responding really to the context that's changing around the world. And it's much more about outward looking in your containers. Do you agree?
Yes, it's what I said also in the interview. It's the purpose of our job, you know. Why are we doing this? To pollute more or to be useful to change? And if we want change, we need to connect with all the other industries and with all the local industries and not only with fashion weeks in Paris, London, and New York. There is so much more creativity that we had to discover and also to put on a platform. And then if we find all those people, we can make a better work. So there is a change necessary to the Fashion Week system, first. Secondly, we have to give more a voice to other people in the system. And finally, we have to ask ourselves the purpose of our job. I was saying this morning, I never had one day in my life that I was bored, because it's so much fun, this industry, but it's also a lot of responsibility. The teaching aspect is very important, but also after the teaching, the coaching is very important. Sometimes students are lost after the graduation. So there are so many topics that we have to guide creativity also after school, and also guide it in the fashion industry, connecting with other topics like researchers on brain studies and so on. So we have to open it up. And to finalize, what I was hoping to say, that is, I was at the fashion show of Yohji Yamamoto in Paris, 40 years of a career and still fresh of finding a nice draping, you know. So that is possible. It is possible to have a long career and be fresh in your creativity. But it's not always easy if it's linked to the system that is very demanding today. So the purpose, what we are doing, is questioning that every day, I guess, to make our job, having a sense in what we do, and if we can contribute to the system in a very positive way.
And can I ask a question? I mean, this is much more, I mean, you're from your experience of Antwerp and the transition towards Polymoda and other places. Do you see the process of how you support young people and how they want to go into the fashion world? Do you see that as being similar, or do you see differences between the approach you took in Antwerp and the approach you took in Polymoda, for example?
Yes, Polymoda is a very different school. We have very much a broader program. So Antwerp is only the creativity fashion design section, and we have here from art direction to communication to marketing, business, the whole system of the fashion industry is there to studied by young people or master programs. So it's completely different. The outcome should be the same. The outcomes should be a person that is knowledgeable and useful in the industry, whatever the job profile he or she choose. So that's the final answer to your question. It's a very different program, but the outcome should be a very good high-level education and useful for the business industry and for the system. And yes, I think we have in those different sections different answers to give to students who come to teach in the programs, yes.
You have a question, I see, from the audience.
Thank you. Linda, I want to a little bit pick up on how we have to change the whole system. And I have a question for everyone, actually, which might be a little bit off topic, but how depending are the creatives of all the free labor by interns? And this is something that I experienced when working in Antwerp for one of the designers myself, that the whole industry is basically depending on interns keeping the designers to keep them going. And I was wondering, how is the industry changing in that aspect? And is anyone thinking about it? Or am I the only one who finds it weird that you sometimes have designer fashion houses where 60% or 80% of the staff are interns?
Are you asking me because you said Linda? Yeah.
Would you like to respond? Yes.
I'll give you an answer anyway. I don't think that, I think a few years ago that was, let's say 5 or 10 years, it was the case. But I think we have a very good system of interns and guiding interns And a school that is respectful should follow up also that kind of system, because it's not okay that they work for free. I guess this is a bit has changed a lot, and I think every school is responsible for that as well, and have to have a program to do a follow-up on internships.
If I can just add to that question, do you suggest really that the companies are taking advantage of the internship's own creativity? Is that what you're suggesting?
Is that sometimes some designers are not organizing themselves in the most efficient in the most efficient way, because the free labor is there anyway. And I'm just wondering how it's evolving in the sector.
I suspect, I mean, there's lots of answers there, and I don't know if anyone wants to say. Yes,
Yeah.
Bianca.
There's different kind of interns. Luckily, in our office, we cannot say it's 60% interns by far. No, we have 5 interns, creative and not creative. The creative ones are maximum 3 people. I think it depends if people, and that can be interns or also paid people, if you abuse them, like making them work too many hours and whatever, it's never good. Either you're an intern or an employee. An intern in our situation, and I think the brands that we can compare with, it's more, and I also look at Annick, the interns that we work with, is really to educate together with the school what real fashion world is about. And from the beginning, we asked them to be able to do the internship from the first day until the last day of a whole season. There's plenty of interns that want to come for 3 weeks, for 3 months, and we say no, either it's the whole season or it's not. We could say yes, but then they don't experience the show, they don't experience the showroom, etc. So it would be, we feel pity actually for the intern to not be able to follow the whole program. So from our point of view, it's yes, we love to work with interns. I can say with all my good faith that we don't at all abuse them. And that is really a learning process together with the schools to see like how can, most of the times we hire them afterwards, they become our colleagues.
Because I mean, what percentage of your staff, in fact, were employed from internships?
We are 20, and we have 3 creative interns and 2 not creative interns.
The people who are there full time, well, did they all come through the internship route?
Sorry, sir?
The ones that are there full time now, the full paid staff that were there all the time, did they come through the internship route?
A lot of them came, yes, thanks to the internship, and then we got to know them. You see how they work,
and I think that seems to be the case. I mean, a lot of companies often need to see the internships to see if they fit. It's as simple as that. Really.
And I think the size of Raf Simons, it's probably not the size of company that I was referring to. It's more like the designers that are just starting 1 year, 2 year, that don't have the budgets to do everything themselves, neither to hire the people. And then this is something which is still worries me.
I personally, I think if as a designer you depend on interns, it's not a good start. I think a creative person maybe needs a good business partner, or at least a partner to start and to exchange ideas and to say, this is what I want. Can you help me? Can you not help me? To ask this to an intern, I don't know if this is the starting point of your business. I wonder how far it goes personally, but I do think if a creative person doesn't have a person next to her or him that can understand a creative process, the way of thinking, the goal of the collection, of the inspiration, it might be difficult to succeed.
Andrea, I got the impression you might want to say something. Or Shayli, do you wish to say?
I'm just going to snatch this because I'm quite passionate about this topic, because it is on topic for creativity, because we don't realize what that is doing to creativity. I believe a lot of creativity is born out of resourcefulness. It's a skill that you kind of learn when you're backed into a corner often. I mean, it's quite punk when you have to think in lateral ways. So it's often that people who are highly creative are not, wealthy necessarily. So when you have an intern system where only people who are financially supported can move to Paris, can move to London and enter the industry, then you are building a huge barrier against a lot of very talented people who could be very valuable to you. And I don't think it's about the size of the company. It's really about the way that the company chooses to run, because there are a lot of small companies that are also majority interns. So you're kind of, by doing that, building an industry where you're excluding a lot of people who can add a lot of value. And that's also why I've created this business, is because I was in this situation. And this, for me, is the only channel and the only way out of it, because I can't build a brand from the ground up or work for free. And it's not just one internship a lot of the time. I have friends who are really talented people who've done like 5 internships for free, living in Paris, working in cafes after they finish. So it's just really not working. It's not working for a lot of people. So.
Okay, thank you. I think we've got time for 1 or 2 questions, because we'll be closing quite soon, because I think we need to think about giving people a break before we go to the Fashion Museum this evening. A question there, please.
Yeah, so I hate to be annoying, but it kind of connects also to what you were saying or mentioning about the fashion industry somehow being a bit elitist. But I think we are relying too much on creativity. Creativity needs time and it needs space. And also there are different levels of creativity. And we see it, I mean, we saw it in the last year's collection, last seasons. I mean, what happened? Has everyone all of a sudden lost its creativity? How is this even possible? I don't believe it personally. I believe that maybe the terrain wasn't, for many reasons, just wasn't fertile for creativity. Moreover, as the lady over there was saying before, I mean, there is the inspiration. A creative person can be inspired by anything. He or she can be inspired by a beautiful, I don't know, pink blooming rose. Is it going to be beautiful? Yes. Is it going to be relevant? Is it going to be useful, like Linda was saying? I am not sure. And so, yeah, creativity can perhaps save the world if put in the position to do so. And if the creative person wants to, because that's also, I mean, something to keep in mind. Otherwise, no, I don't think it can. I'm sorry.
So you're saying that creativity can't save the world, and therefore...
Creativity could.
It could,
but
in the right circumstances.
But it's a bit too, I mean, when we say a creative person can produce so many collections and creativity, I mean, all it takes is, no, nobody said all it takes, but I mean, stressing so much on the creativity without considering everything that's around it, no, I don't think it's helpful, not to the creative person, neither to the industry, nor to the world, since that's what we're talking about.
Okay, so your question is, can we have an industry without creativity?
No, how can the industry help the creativity? If we are at the point of saying creativity can save the world, okay, so how can we let them do it?
Okay. How can the industry help the notion of creativity?
I think, I mean, I don't know, when we had a bit of a discussion before this meeting, Ia was like, well, if fashion doesn't change, then, for instance, legislators will make it change, or, you know, there's other systems. It's true, it's not that creativity in fashion will save the world, but for instance, if we define creativity as putting different systems together, one of the systems is the social system that can demand to legislators for certain changes, for certain supports for young entrepreneurship, for startups. So for me, this is a matter of creativity. For instance, the research I'm doing is together with the Antwerp Fashion Department, with the University of Antwerp, the Faculty of Economics, with the Antwerp Management School. We are aware that you need different systems to come together, and the politics. And so I don't know if I'm answering, but for me, creativity is not about making collections or movies or musical pieces. It's about, you know, how you make things happen.
The end of your story was okay, although halfway I got a little bit upset, but in the beginning. I do not agree, and I think it's also very elitist to say, like, yeah, did the last year's collections lost their creativity? Like, I think it's quite rude towards those people. Like, these are, yeah, it breaks my heart, really. And I think those young people, they're 19 years, they're 20 years, they do their best, they give everything they can, they really want to succeed in that education, in that direction, they want to make their future in this. And yeah, okay, we come there to see their last year's collection, and then we go to the bar and say, like, whoa, last year was much better. That's not nice. It's very rude to those people. I think, like, young people, yesterday I got a discussion with 15 German students at the university in Düsseldorf. I was blown away by how they think, how they talk, how they dare to talk. Yeah, they call us the seniors. Well, okay, but let's behave like a senior. But when I was young, like, I didn't dare to talk in that way to elder people, like to my parents, but or to whoever had, like, an opinion which was much more mature than mine. And I really appreciate how they absorb things and how they can express now how they feel, what they want to tell, what they want to say. So there was, in the very beginning of this panel, there was a question to Linda saying, what do you want to give to the younger generation? What do you want to tell to the younger generation? Well, if someone asks me, what do I want to tell to the younger generation? It's the same as I want to tell to the older generation. It's like, get as much as possible surrounded by things that I know you don't like the word that inspires you. Well, let's not use the word that inspires you, but assemble as much more positive things, nice things, beautiful things around you, which creates for you the best starting point. And that, I think, like, it's for me another way of looking to creativity, to a younger generation, to a senior generation.
I would like to add just something. You were saying that how can the system help creatives? There's always, help is always welcome, but I think in our scale of business grandeur, or it's the designers, they know their suppliers, they know the fabric suppliers, they know the suppliers that sew and cut and make the collections, they know even their buyers, they know their final client. So, and I think it's really a respectful circle, because they do understand that if there's no creativity, there's no design, there's also no product. But also they understand that even now with Corona, when the suppliers, we do almost everything in Italy. When they called us in February and they said, listen, we have to close all the companies, the only thing we can make is face masks. We were like, okay, who's going to produce our new collection? So we are aware that it's a system, and that it's not only the creativity that makes the business, yeah, exactly. And it's the whole circle. But I still do believe that indeed creativity is the center of the business, and the system can help in many, many ways. For example, if there is good designers to give financial help, or find a way to make young designers that don't have the possibility financially to go to Paris or to London or wherever, to give them another way of platform of showing themselves to the world. I think, yes, there is a need of help. but still creativity should stay on top.
I'm going to give each of the panel members the opportunity to make a last comment, to say what they would like the audience to take away from the discussion this evening, or maybe just a message that perhaps you'd think, okay, creativity is at the core, but I'd like you to take this away. So it's a challenge for you. I like that.
No, I was the first.
Charlotte says she's brave. I can tell.
Mustering up the courage. No, I guess my first thought was that creativity has to be from a genuine place, and we're living in a very a world that's very inauthentic at this moment, and I think this is a problem that a lot of consumers are having with a lot of the products being put out. Is that there is a lack of trust when someone's saying they're sustainable. There's a lack of trust when someone says they're being creative or that they're going to take social action. We don't buy the words and the actions when everything's developed at the helm of, as I like to say, the capitalist scene. This is a terminology I've been using because a lot of people have been talking about we're in the age of the Anthropocene. We want to blame humanity for the world's losses. But I would like to say that I want to blame capitalism and mass production for the world's losses. So I think we need to think about more heartfelt and authentic and true actions, and it has to come from that creative center point, from the designer, and they have to believe what they're saying and do these things because it's part of who they are, not a part of who they want to consume it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Who would like to go next?
I fully agree with you. I think it's very beautiful what you say. It's indeed, let's stay away a little bit from the mass consumption, I would say. But I think it's also the final consumer that should think twice before they buy and think like, okay, do I really need this piece? If you need it, make sure that you love it that much that you can wear it for the next 20 years. Instead of thinking, okay, next week I have another party, I have to dress differently than today. So, and I think that is also what fashion, as I see fashion, that you really believe in what the designer is communicating and the beauty of it, and also the way that you can wear it for the rest of your life. And if you don't fit in it, at least you can look at it and enjoy looking at it.
Perfect. I'm not sure if Filip and
just writing.
Andrea. Okay.
Okay.
Linda.
I'm not texting.
Okay. Linda, do you have any thoughts that you'd like the audience to take away from you? Your thinking.
Yes, I mean, fashion is creativity, and it's in all the community, in every little person that is working for a collection, there is creativity. So it's not only the designer has to transmit his ideas to a beautiful bunch of people, and those people produce those garments with a kind of certain creativity. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there like we think it should be. So, yeah, creativity is a kind of concept that links every little person that's working in this industry. So I think it's a beautiful metaphor for saying we are in together and not alone.
Andrea, are you ready?
I'm ready.
No, that's definitely... Filip is ready.
So the question was, what do you want?
Yeah, what do you want?
What do you want the audience to take away? Like, and I wrote down, I just walk out and gather as much as possible positiveness to bring each of you your tribute to a better creative world, which I will say, like, creativity starts with yourself.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I totally agree.
The last voice.
Last voice, and okay, advice, manifesto. Okay, one is empathy. Put yourself in other people's shoes